Welcome to the Teens Talk podcast, created by the Student Virtual Board of Youth Celebrate Diversity. YCD supports teachers and students organizing locally, educating themselves and their peers, and taking action for inclusion and social justice. For more information, please visit ycdiversity.org. Did you know that Asia is home to over 50 countries and the Pacific has more than 25,000 islands? I didn't. For this episode, I'm bringing together Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, known as AAPI, from all corners of the United States. As an Asian American myself, I'll be joining this conversation using my own experiences to guide this conversation on what it means to be Asian American. I have a really great group of people today to talk about Asian and Pacific Islander identity across the country, and we can start doing introductions.
I can go ahead and start. My name is Alexis Stephan. My background, so originally I'm from Hawaii. I'm 19 currently, so I was in Hawaii until I was 13, and I've been living in Lakewood, Colorado for the past 6 years.
So, I'm Lila Khan. I'm an 8th grader at Montclair Kimberly Academy. I've lived in Montclair for 13 years and I'm almost 14 years old. I'm of Bangladeshi and Indian descent, and I'm actively involved with social issues within the AAPI community in my town.
Hi, my name is Trinity Fong. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a film student at Emerson College, and I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm from Cantonese and Taiwanese descent.
All right, thank you, Alexis, Trinity, and Lila. I'll just introduce myself briefly. Hello, I'm Layla. I go to Emerson College, where I am a senior student studying media arts production, and my hometown is Denver, Colorado, where I grew up there my whole life. And the other thing about me is that I am a transracial adoptee. I have a white family, and my dad is from South Africa. So I have identities from all over the place. So going into the first question, kind of to warm us up, what does being AAPI mean to you?
Just being Asian in the United States could be a little difficult, but at the same time, not at the same time, because there's some racist aspects when I went to school, public school and like elementary. People were like, "Are you from China?" And I was like, "No, I'm not from China." But also like sometimes I don't really fit in. But recently, because in movies and TV shows, I feel like there's like a lot of Asian representation, so it's gotten a lot better. And even K-pop, people are idolizing like K-pop stars.
For me personally, just growing up in Hawaii, Hawaii has a lot of like obviously Pacific Islanders because I'm Native Hawaiian and Filipino, but it also does have a lot of Asian descent just because of like all of the people who came over from Asia to like work in all like the canning factories we have over there. So down there it wasn't really hard, just because everybody's pretty much the same. Up here it was a little different. Like people definitely comment on like the shape of our eyes, and that's like a little weird, or like they expect us to be able to be really good at certain things even though we're all different. But overall to me, like it's like a really big like prideful thing for me, just like I said, because I'm raised in Hawaii, so our community is huge down there. So I was always taught that it was like incredible to be, Native Hawaiian and Filipino and just all types of Asian and stuff like that.
Great to hear, Alexis.
I think that being AAPI means celebrating culture, like advocating for social justice, creating awareness of issues that affect like all Asians and all Pacific Islanders, and finding ways to engage and educate communities like that are less aware of the AAPI people.
Yeah, thank you for all those responses. I think about being AAPI, that's a kind of a big question for me personally as well, because it can mean so many things with my identity. Even though I feel like I didn't really grow up among the community, I kind of found pride, I think, through connecting with an international community and trying. I still celebrate some of my own Chinese holidays, like Chinese New Year, red envelopes. And there's also a special holiday for adoptees called Gotcha Day. And I grew up kind of with childhood friends who were also Chinese adoptees. So I had a little community. So I think I might have touched on a little bit of this, but when you grew where you grew up, was there a large AIPI community? And how did that impact you?
Well, I mean, I can start because, like I was saying, Hawaii is pretty predominantly like Filipino Americans and Native Hawaiians. So down there, like you learn like all the cultures are like mixed together. So a lot of things that I think are like Hawaiian actually like stem off of like a lot of like Asian cultures. And I didn't realize it until I moved up here, like how much I connected with people like that because every time I had an Asian classmate, I would say something and she would like immediately understand what I was saying, or just like it comes down to like facial expressions and like the way that we move. Like I didn't realize how much like it is an impact in Hawaii until I was meeting other Asians that were up here. Like even though we're separated, it just means a lot to me that we're still like the same and like our values and stuff are still carried around. So that's all.
In Montclair, and there's a really large AAPI community. They actually started AAPI Montclair like during COVID, but now it's AAPI New Jersey because of how much it's grown and like the publicity and how many people have like joined. So yeah, there's a very large community of AAPI.
Where I grew up, there wasn't a lot besides my extended family, but they all lived in California. I was pretty sheltered as a kid, and when I went to school, everyone was mostly like Caucasian. So I didn't really get to like grow up within a community, but I did have my parents, and my mom is from Taiwan, so she would always like speak Chinese.
Oh wow.
Cool from all of you. There, everyone has kind of a feeling of connection, level connection. We'll talk more about that. Also, going in to kind of this whole category of AAPI, do you ever feel like it is too broad or cannot encompass one set of values or experiences?
I feel like it kind of is. So like I said, with like being Filipino, a lot of the times that like I'm celebrating AAPI, a lot of people obviously get the fact that I'm Native Hawaiian, but I like when I tell people I'm Filipino, they're like, what is that? And I'm like, oh, that's like I'm Asian. And they're like, no, it's not. So it's just, I think it is a little broad, but I think it's just because like we lack the education to tell people that these people are also Asian. I think people forget how big Asia is. So like on the Asian American part, for sure. But like Pacific Islander people are really good at naming all of them. It's just like when it comes down to like Asia and all of like the smaller Asian countries, people either don't believe or they forget that we're also Asian.
I also agree. I think like sometimes it can be too broad because like there are like Asia, like Alexis said, Asia's like really, really big. So I feel like it could be broken down into like, I mean, some people use like Northeastern, like Asian and like Southeast Asian and terms like that. But I feel like the term API like puts it all together.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah, I agree as well.
Yeah, very well said, because I think that was an important point to go on because we talk about AAPI across the country. Asia as a continent is so broad, and I remember even I've had my own flubs and slip ups where there's also people who are in the Middle East can also be considered Asian. And there's also, I remember in class once, a time when people were like, oh yeah, like people in Russia, because it's right above like China, can also be considered Asian. So there's just so much like heritage kind of attached to one continent that can't possibly be everything represented. So thanks for going into that. So kind of going into your own personal experiences now. Can you tell me if you were raised in a household speaking a language other than English? And if there is or is not, was there any specific significance to hearing your native or home language?
Yeah, I can start that out. Like I said, my mom spoke Chinese sometimes to me, so I grew up understanding. I can't speak, but I can understand it. But sometimes when she's talking to her sisters, she has six sisters, and they start speaking Taiwanese, I have no idea what they're saying. I only can understand Mandarin.
My like inner family, we don't speak any like of native languages in our house, but my grandparents are all immigrants and they all speak. My grandma and grandpa on my mom's side speak Gujarati, which is like Hindi in India, and my other grandparents speak Bengali. But I don't understand anything, but sometimes I can understand from like hand gestures and facial expressions, but that's kind of it.
I got nothing for you, girl. None of them speak any other languages. I mean, there's like the casual like Hawaiian word here and there, but for the most part, when Hawaii was integrated into the US, they actually kind of banned the speaking of the native language because they didn't like it. So a lot of it was lost.
I feel like I'm on the same page as you with that, Alexis. I actually like for my stories, my family really wanted me to speak Mandarin Chinese because there was a time when it was like China's hot. Why don't you, like learn how to thrive in the global market and it will help you connect to your culture? But I just felt like I was like particularly bad at it and I felt very self-conscious being like a Chinese person who like wasn't the best at speaking the language and I didn't really practice because there wasn't really like community around me who spoke that language. It was just in school. So that kind of, I think, gave me the wrong idea for a while. So it was kind of harder for me. So I kind of wanted to actually spend some more time talking about language and its significance. Did any of you ever feel kind of like good or like a bit nervous about trying to connect with the languages of like your families? Were there any challenges to that?
Yeah, like I said, at my extended family on my mom's side, they're all from Taiwan, and they all and their my cousins can all speak both Taiwanese and Mandarin. So sometimes they all communicate in those languages, and I just don't understand what they're saying. And my cousins that live in Atlanta, there's two of them. All three of us are the only ones that can't speak it, but understand to some extent. So they made fun of that.
Not like and my mom understands but doesn't speak, and my dad speaks and like understands everything but speaks a little bit. But like none of my like cousins really speak any other languages. But when I was younger, my mom and my aunt put me and my older cousin into culture cool classes to like learn about our languages and our heritage and our gods. And like I liked it, but after a while, like I never really picked up on anything. So it kind of felt like what's the point if I'm not going to understand it? But like now I kind of wish I did carry through with it because like it gives me like more of a sense of understanding of where I'm from and like my grandparents and stuff like that.
Um, it's super weird because I can sing like I play like the ukulele and everything like that, and I can sing like hundreds of songs in Hawaiian, but they never like had like sit down classes until literally like 3 years ago where they would teach you Hawaiian. So like everything that I know and understand is from like my great grandmother. So right now she's working in Hawaii, like trying to like revive the original language and what it was and not like the pacified version. So I think it's a really big part that we slip in words here and there. Like it helps us remember that we had a language and everything like that. But I think we're getting around to teaching it more in Hawaii. So I'm excited about that, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, thank you for us talk about language. I know it can be really personal and everyone's kind of at a different phase in their journey as well. It's kind of accessibility of learning the language and connecting to a culture that's from or cultures. So moving on to something that's kind of in the same vein, within your family or household, do you celebrate any cultural holidays that people may not be as familiar with?
So I celebrate like a lot of holidays that are, I think, gaining more familiarity now because of things like AAPI communities in towns and neighborhoods. But I celebrate Eid That's like it's like a Ramadan is the first 30 days of fasting, then Eid it celebrates the end of Ramadan. And then I celebrate Holi and Diwali, which are both on my mom's side, which I think Diwali is a lot more well known now than what it used to be. Like it gained more recognition.
And Lila, did you want to kind of talk and go more into how those are celebrated?
Yeah, so like how they're celebrated in my town or like how I celebrate them.
You can talk a bit on both.
So, Eid is at the end of Ramadan, and Ramadan is a fast, a 30-day fast that you break at sundown and sunset. And this past year, past 2 years, my dad has hosted an iftar dinner, which is the break of a fast within our town, like in our community. So, and it's just a lot of events, especially for Diwali. We have like a huge Diwali festival at one of our museums every year in Montclair, and like there are dances, food trucks. It's like people come and sell stuff. Then there's also like learning about Diwali, and then Holi, we have like a color run. Holi's like when you throw color at people. It's like it's very big in India, less big in the States, but you get like colored powder or water guns with color, and everyone wears white, and you like throw it at people. So recently, for the past couple of years, we've had like a color run where it's a 5K for like the adults and a 1 mile, I think, for the younger children. And like at the end, everyone like throws color on everyone, and throughout the race there are volunteers who like throw color and like spray people with water guns.
That sounds like the coolest thing ever, actually.
Oh, so fun.
Uh, my family doesn't really celebrate, like fully celebrate holidays, but what we do is when it gets time for like the Moon Festival or Lunar New Year, we would always like go out to eat. And there's always like at Costco, there's moon cakes now. So you can get moon cakes for Moon Festival. And apparently in Disneyland, they even have a Lunar New Year celebration.
I love mooncakes, by the way. I like remember the story in class and stuff where like I was told like there was like this one like fall festival. I think it was like the lunar cake that was like the most expensive like food out there, but my teacher still served it, so I felt really glad. It tasted really good. It was like bean cake.
Really like the White Lotus with the egg yolk in it. That's my favorite.
Yeah, you all just feel like Asian foods are the best. I see you jumping in, Alexis.
Just to tell you, I got nothing for you, girl. I'm gonna be honest. Hawaii kind of just takes like American holidays and puts like flowers and like all of our food on it. We do have something called King Kamehameha Day, which we have huge statues of one of the greatest kings of Hawaii of all time. He basically brought all of the islands together. So it's June 11th, and every time we make all these leis, like flower leis, tea leaf leis, and all of the statues are so covered in leis, like you can't even see them. Like it's just flowers and stuff like that. But for the most part, like we don't really celebrate like any of our own holidays. Like we never really had any like cultural holiday stuff like that. But that's all.
Yeah, that's totally good because I've always felt like for my family, like with them not being like members of the Asian community, I always wondered if it was like a Disney-fied version. Sometimes like what I was celebrating, but I feel like it's often like for me, like it's the personal connection to the culture. Like for me, I don't feel like, like I can authentically like walk into like Chinese New Year and do like any of the dances or like sing the songs. So I kind of step off to the side, but I always like trying to feel close to it, or when I see it, I want to celebrate it and think it's really cool. So I know kind of that feeling of like wanting to be involved, maybe being at a different level, being distant versus having more familiarity. Like one of my best resources actually was when I had my Chinese classes was that the teachers would also teach the culture and holidays as a part of that. So kind of elaborating into this question, because I know we're talking about how we're from different areas of the country. Would you say the kind of the area you lived in as well, like growing up, kind of impacted the way that you celebrate the holiday versus how it would have been celebrated back in like your native country?
I think like less about like how it's celebrated in my native country because that's like across the world, so it's obviously going to be different, and this is like kind of a lesser version, but I think definitely celebrating it in my town and seeing my friends and like family and everyone like celebrate it with me has definitely made me like less, I would say, like maybe insecure about celebrating my holidays and being super proud of them because like all my friends celebrate like Hanukkah and like Christmas, and like I celebrate Eid, which nobody really knows about. So like it kind of just gives me like more of a reason to want to represent my culture and show my culture to everybody else and like for everyone else to learn about it.
Like I said before, my parents are not really like big on holidays. We don't really go full out. We just like eat good food. That's our tradition. And I'm pretty sure it would be different if we did celebrate it in like China because there's always like festivals going on and then fireworks, lion dances. That'd be interesting and pretty much good food.
That's valid. Okay, so moving on kind of from the cultural holidays and kind of this idea of representation and being proud of who you are, your connection to your culture. How do you feel about the state of AAPI representation in media?
Um, I think that it's been increasing since other people have been bringing more consciousness like to the AAPI community, especially during like COVID. However, I don't think it reflects the amount of AAPI people, and I feel like there could be more representation in media.
I completely agree with that. As a filmmaker, I think there's not enough media to make up for all like the past films that had stereotypical characters like, oh, that one's good at math, like that one's the nerd, or oh, he was just born with like kung fu powers. I think there's great media right now, but there should be more to make up for all of the films that have mostly white predominant characters.
I agree completely. I'm also going to talk about how like people forget that like the PI portion of AAPI is Pacific Islanders, so they're forgetting about the Malaysians, they're forgetting about like the Micronesians, they're forgetting that Polynesia, like Polynesian is not like just a race. Like I'm Polynesian, but I'm Hawaiian. It's a blanket term, and a lot of people forget that, and I have an issue with that for sure. When in like social medias and stuff, like in movies, like there are Pacific Islander characters and stuff, but obviously not enough since there are tons of people who have been like, "Oh, I'm Hawaiian," and they'll tell me that it's like not a thing and that it's not like a race of people, and they'll tell me like, "Oh, you're Samoan." "Oh, no, 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 you're Tongan." And I think Asian American, like for sure, is getting a lot better for us on that half. I really do think we need to start bringing our Pacific Islander brother and sisters like into the conversation. Like we're getting lost. Like there's Micronesia has hundreds of islands, you know, Melanesia, there's Fijians, like all these people who are out there in the Pacific who are just like lost completely. And also, like we were talking about earlier, um, I think we need to talk about the Asian Americans who are like of darker skin tone because a big thing that I would get in school is like, you're not Asian, like, look at you. And what does that mean? Like, first of all, what does that mean? But I think we need to talk about like our darker brothers and sisters as well because they're like, people are acting like they're not even part of the family when they're also from Asia. So sorry for getting passionate, but
Yeah, this is such a big and broad topic there. And I feel like, yes, idea of increased representation, like we are only scratching the surface of what is possible. Like there's so many stories and kind of going off what Trinity was saying, I feel like there is kind of this like box that has happened where like the little representation there is kind of falls into like the same archetype or character. Then people think that a whole group of a subset of Asians is like this. Did you all have any kind of like really like good examples of representation on something you saw that you connected with, or any examples that you think people should be kind of warier of?
Um, my family, we used to like binge watch Fresh Off the Boat every night. I really liked that show. It was really funny. And resonated with some of the characters, and the mom was really funny. She reminded me of my mom.
Just like a little thing from Hawaii, we call people down there fobs, which literally stands for fresh off the boat. So like any Pacific Islanders who have like really thick accents, that's what they'll call them. Like, oh gosh, that guy's a fob, and like they just say it to them because I don't know, it's just funny. That's all I thought about. So thank you for bringing that up.
My mom and I, we watch a lot of like Bollywood movies, but I don't understand like any of the languages that they speak, so English subtitles is the way to go. But like I feel like that's a way like a culture, API culture is like represented in media, especially for like Indians, because a lot of Bollywood movies are really, really great, but people don't usually watch them because they're not in English.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. And that kind of my film nerd is coming out here. I wanted to bring up kind of some kind of the bit. I feel like there's been kind of a big subset of East Asian representation that kind of started out with Crazy Rich Asians to now. Then there was that film that was like Best International Feature at the Oscars that I followed for a bit, Parasite, which brought in South Korea and kind of that state and was able to win the Oscar while being entirely in Korean. And then now we have Everything Ever All at Once, which is a very kind of popular like mainstream story while still having like the representation, having an AAPI story. Did any of you all have any thoughts on those films or kind of the recent wave of big movies coming out?
I have, it's not related, but at the same time it is. A lot of people that I know that are not Asian have been getting into K-dramas recently. I thought that was very interesting. I was like, where did this come from?
I agree. I agree. I feel like okay, with like the whole representation thing and everything, I feel like we're being put in like a lot of like just random movies and like stuff as like the diversity hire, you know what I mean? But then we go somewhere where we should be and we're not there. Like I don't like you like you're saying, like a lot of like K dramas and stuff, like there were a lot of people in it that aren't like Asian American and stuff or Asian period. But then we're in movies we have like no business being in, and I'm like, oh, word. I don't know. It's just like it's switching up. I don't know what's going on, but I understand what you're saying.
All right, I'll just jump in at that. Yeah, there's like a lot of great like international content out there, but even it's sometimes it's so hard to get past that language barrier and kind of jump into it. Also, I wanted to point out kind of like I feel like a lot of people's first representation out. I know you're all kind of in the same generation as me was like Disney and stuff, like when they had like Mulan and Moana, and kind of that was like the big like AAPI like moment. I think they were decent movies, but when you're like younger, did you feel like there was solid representation or any other things you kind of
Um,
do?
for Mulan, I kind of like pushed that film away. I was like, no, that's not my favorite Disney princess because every time like someone was like, oh, if we were a Disney princess, who would we be? Trinity would be Mulan. I was like, what does that mean? Like, but then like recently I watched it again on the plane because I had nothing else to do. I was like, oh, Mulan, I haven't watched that in a while. And I realized it's a really good film. Like it's one of the best Disney films I've ever seen. I was like, this is actually the best thing I've ever seen. Why did I hate this before?
Okay. Um, which inherently I understand like where like your like disconnect with it was because that is like an odd thing, to like say. It would be like, oh, who would we be? Well, you're Mulan, because well, like that's a horrible thing to say. So first of all, I completely understand that. With like Moana, like I was saying with Pacific Islanders, like there's not like a lot of like disconnect. Like they took all of Polynesia and they put it in one movie. So Moana is Hawaiian. It's a Hawaiian word. It's a Hawaiian name, but she's wearing like Samoan clothing and then she's wearing like Tahitian headdresses. But the thing about like the people of Polynesia is we're super laid back. So literally like when that movie came out, we are like, we're all in this movie. Like we are all in this movie. Like, oh, oh, like we didn't care. We're like, well, that's in Tonga. That's not. But hey, they got all of us in this one movie. That's insane. Like, and we weren't offended at all. So like when that whole thing came out with like all these people who were like, that's so terrible, we were like, we're completely fine with that. We love that. Like, I mean, her dad's Samoan, but he's speaking like he's from New Zealand. But I mean, who cares? Like, look, we're all here, so like a big old family in that movie. Did I like being called Moana? Like, or like Lilo and Stitch? That's also a really big one. Or like Lilo, I was like deep down, you have to know it's like a little bit racist, but at least they're pretty characters. If they were ugly, I'd be more upset. But still, there's like a disconnect. Like, there's just certain things you shouldn't say. Like that Mulan comment was outrageous. That's insane that anyone ever said that to you.
No, it was multiple people. Like that happened like multiple occasions from different people.
Oh my god. That you needed a question about that. That's insane. Okay, go ahead, Layla. Sorry.
Back the box, and yeah, the cultural mashups in there. That was a good thing to bring up, because I get kind of that feeling. I feel like if you're in any group that isn't like the majority, sometimes like the first thing that comes to people's mind is like a kind of stock like big name character. I even remember one of my friends calling like Lilo or something, and that they're like, "Oh, it sounds like your name." And I realized like, wait, it's because I'm like Asian, aren't I? And I have an L name, so like.
Yeah, there's a lot of crazy things that happen to us, but it's honestly more funny than it is like ridiculous. It's like, what, whatever. Like that's all you can really say, honestly.
See, that's why we need more representation in media. We need more characters and not just one.
I agree. There's only one Indian Disney princess, and that's Jasmine. Like, I feel like they're definitely, and also like India is not Bangladesh, India is not Pakistan. Like, it's one place. Like, where's the Bangladeshi princess? Where's the Pakistani princess? Like, just covering one like country doesn't cover all of them.
Word. And that's what I was saying earlier with like Polynesia. Like, I literally told somebody, I'm like, oh, I'm Hawaiian. And they're like, right. After I just called you a Polynesian. I'm like, no, Polynesian like it goes Indian and then it goes Pakistani. Like it doesn't go, no, you're Indian. Like, no, I agree completely. I get what you're saying.
And this, like in the live action movies, like Aladdin and Mulan, I did a lot of research on the casting. Aladdin, it was not very accurate because the guy who played Aladdin was Egyptian. Jasmine was like half Caucasian. I was like, wait, so what's the whole point of this movie? I mean, it's a good movie, but it's just not very like ethnically accurate in my opinion. Everyone was just like different parts, just like in Moana.
So I know that was a pretty big conversation. So moving into something that's a little bit more personal that I kind of want to talk about, because I feel like it's kind of a running joke I've heard a lot in AAPI circles is, did you ever feel like you were parented a certain way because of your background?
Um, I I think so. Like, I feel like this could be different for everyone, but I think there's like a different level of pressure for academic success because everyone always expects the like Asian people to be the smart people. And even for my parents, like they put a lot of pressure on me to get good grades. And I also think there's a level of pressure to participate in cultural activities, like celebrating your holidays, wearing traditional clothing, like stuff like that.
My parents are not very stereotypical Asian parents per se. Just let me do whatever. For school, when I started sixth grade, I did online school because I was figure skating. So I didn't have time to go to regular school. So it was kind of up to me if I wanted to get good grades or not. But they're like, yeah, but you kind of want to, but they didn't really like force it on me. There's like, just make sure you do so you can like be able to go to college. And they're also very open to like what career I want to do and all that stuff.
Sorry, I took so long because I was thinking of like what I'm allowed to say. Um, because okay, they didn't like beat me, but I definitely got hit a couple times, and I feel like that's different in like specifically like the Pacific like island community. Like there's like a lot more like discipline and stuff, and there's a lot of like respecting your elders, like and the Pacific Islander part of me is definitely the biggest part. I feel like it's a very like overwhelming like culture. even if you're only 20%, you're saying you're Hawaiian, you're Hawaiian, you're Hawaiian, just because that's what you're taught. Like it's a very like prideful thing to be like you're a Polynesian person. And they teach you to be like super respectful to elders. So I literally cannot like call any adult like who's my friend's parent by their first name because that's disrespectful. And I think there's just a lot of things that I wouldn't do just because of the way my mom raised me. And like both of you were talking about schooling and stuff, I agree with like you have to like try your hardest. Like I was always honor roll, I was always pushed to be top of my class, and it was to the point where my mom was like teaching me every single day when I was like 4 or 5, and I had to like test into this huge private school so I could start school early and just like all this stuff. And I feel like our cultures definitely had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up kind of like this theme of pressure or kind of the desire to be excellent in certain things. I also wanted to kind of bring in a bit of like an more of an intersectional topic from my own experiences. I also think that this theme of pressure is common among immigrant parents, especially like this kind of pressure and like this idea like if you're coming to America, if you aren't in the majority group, you better do well and kind of represent your group super well. I guess for me, as in I had a mixture because like my mom, she like is originally from Florida, and I would say she's like kind of very like it's kind of laid back American style parenting where like I was told like I can follow my dreams. I don't have to worry as much. There wasn't as much of an emphasis on like educational attainment or like doing super well and like one thing, kind of more about being happy in myself. Well, my dad was like kind of a typical like I guess more of an immigrant parent where like I wouldn't say it was like I had to respect like elders and stuff like as much, but it was more like I better succeed. I better like be involved. He really supported me being extracurricularly involved and wanted me to like find my niche and also like do well enough, to go to college and like C's and B's weren't good in his mind, but he got more chill. Would you say there was any kind of other than the pressure, like positive or kind of other interesting things about your upbringing?
I think like kind of bringing up what you said before about extracurriculars, my mom definitely pushed a lot of extracurricular activities on me, and I'm only in eighth grade, but from when I was like young, and I feel like that really like benefited me because now like I can actually find what my interests are, and like I can lay back on some of the stuff I used to do that I'm not as interested anymore and actually find out like what I love and what I love to do. And at first, I didn't love the extracurricular pressure. Like, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have tutoring here, you have violin here. Like, I didn't like that. But now, like, I've kind of grown to appreciate it more because it's actually helping me.
I agree with extracurriculars. I mean, I kind of love like I hated it for sure too when I was in like sixth, seventh, eighth grade because it's like so busy. But now I feel like I'm great at everything. So like I play all types of sports and I do like all types of like instruments and stuff. Like I was playing like 5 different instruments when I was like middle school through like halfway through high school. So it's like it really pushed me to be out there, really pushed me to be busy. And now that I'm like out of school, like high school and stuff, I do all these extracurriculars on the side and I always keep my schedule full because now it's just what I'm used to. So I'm like getting so much done because I'm so used to being busy all the time that I need it. So I just fill my schedule with things that I have to do.
Yeah, I had something similar, but I had one singular extracurricular that I did since I was 5.5. I brought it up earlier. I was a figure skater, so I didn't really have time to do a lot of things other than that. I kind of wanted to learn how to play piano, guitar. It's like, but that never happened, which looking back, I wish I did. But I feel like being in like a competitive sport really taught me to like how to schedule everything because I would like practice in the morning, practice in the afternoon, and then get my homework done around in between those areas, go to school in between. So it taught me how to be very organized.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear kind of like there's also this very positive side. Like, it can be a lot of pressure, but there is a good thing to being able to pursue your passion, having a family that wants you to kind of excel and do well. So also kind of going into that because there is kind of this knowledge of like the AAPI community being like so on top of things and talented. Do you ever feel like that ever has boxed you in or adds the pressure to like be good at everything, or like that some groups may not have had like the opportunities to do that, or doing something that may not necessarily be like, I know the joke, like if like an Asian like wants to do like English or like sports, it may not be as encouraged.
Actually, because of those things, I wanted to be the exact opposite. And I was like, I'll prove you wrong. I'm not good at math. I'm not good at anything like academically, actually. When I was in elementary, I would get like bad grades, but it didn't matter because it's just elementary school. I didn't know that. I was like, I'm bad at it, but I'm good at sports. I'm athletic.
Your delivery was so good. I'm not good at math. But I think I fit the stereotype perfectly. I was excellent at math and all those stuff, and that pissed me off so bad. But obviously, with like, you guys can probably tell with like the way that I talk, like I love talking to people and stuff like that. So really big problem with that was people would know that I was Asian, but like I said, like I'm not like the darkest one of us out there, but I am like darker, so people would automatically, I'm not gonna lie, with like stuff like that, would automatically assume because I talk like this so much that I wasn't getting the good grades and like because of my skin tone and stuff. And it was brought up to me by like teachers, like I had a lot of like really bad like racist interactions with people who were supposed to be like the adults that were in charge of us. And they would think that I was doing something stupid in the hallway and I get pulled into the office and they'd be like, "Oh, you're an AP calculus." Well, you better go on, get along. Go ahead, get to your class. You're doing good. So it was like a lot of stuff with like stereotyping, but also like pulling me out from us. You know what I mean? In Lakewood, Colorado specifically, there are a lot of like brown people there, but it's like Hispanic people, it's all like the Latinos and Latinas and stuff like that. And I would get grouped in with like them. So it was like a lot of separation with like my skin tone up here. But that's all, and that was funny. So
I think there's also like pressure from friends. Like, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but like, it's like, what's the answer number four? Oh, ask Lila. She's smart. Like, she'll figure it out. Even if I'm like not good at something or not good in that class, because I'm good at one thing doesn't mean I'm great at everything. I love math, but I'm not in the highest math class, but I still love to do math. Like, I love English, but I'm not like the best at it. I just think like pressure from friends can sometimes be worse from pressure from your parents because or like they think that you're smarter or they think that you're gonna get everything right. Oh, of course you got a good grade on this assignment. Like, what does that mean? Like, what is that supposed to mean? Like, how am I supposed to take that?
I agree with the class thing. I used to get that a lot. In practically every class, they'd be like, "Can you email it to me?" However, I was terrible and I'd email it to them every time. But yeah, I'd get that all the time. "Oh, go ask her." And I'm like, "Go ask her teacher. She's getting paid to be here." So, but yeah, I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah, that's such a relatable thing, being like always assumed to be a good student. I feel like that comes back down to kind of the box people can put you in about that. So kind of going on from that question, which I know brought up a lot of cool topics. What do people not really know about the AAPI experience that you think that they should? Or what are some stuff or some things that are not maybe as covered in media?
Slurs, um, slurs and people's common decency to use them all the time. People like say like a lot of specifically my there's not really a lot of slurs you can call a Hawaiian, so usually like my Asian side and stuff like that, people will just like say things that they have no idea is completely like racist. And I was sitting there and I think somebody was like, "Oh my gosh, like your eyes look really like chinky today." And I literally went, "Okay, so" I was like, "Hold on." I was like, "If you're referring to like the slant or like the squint in my eyes, it's because I'm Asian." And they like just continued to say things and I was like, "You guys realize that that's not like appropriate to say." So like that's a really big thing in our community for sure, like people calling us names or like referring us to like certain things and thinking that it's completely okay and that it's not racist when it is. Like it's casual racism and I can't stand that. Like it's ignorance and I don't like that at all.
Yeah, there was like I was in art class in elementary school, and then one of like the boxes, it had like different languages of the like instructions, and one of it was Chinese, and then some kid was like ching chong ching chong. I was like, what? No way.
Right, which is completely racist. And then for that like girl to like stand 10 toes down, I'm like, I'm Asian, so I'm glad I have the features, you know, and go, yeah, like they're just so slanty. And I'm like, okay, like you're gonna, girl, like it's just insane, like how casual it is to like make fun of our languages, especially like our people in like India for sure. Like I hear people being like really weird about them all the time too, and I just like I cannot understand how in anyone's head or mind that it's acceptable to like do any of that. But I think it's just ignorance. Like I don't think they know that it's racist. It's just become so normalized that nobody's addressing it anymore, and
Yeah.
I cannot
It
stand that.
it also comes from like the parents as well, because my cousin who's in middle school, apparently some kid in his class did like this to him. Like and then they ended up getting in a fight. And I was like, okay, well, someone has to have taught him that. Like it doesn't come out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's sadly still very common. Lila, did you have something to say?
Yeah. I think like it's also like people just being inconsiderate. It's not even them like sometimes trying to be racist. It's just them not like people not thinking, like people being ignorant. Cause like I had like a tutor and he was from India and I was like maybe like 9 or 10. And I asked him where he's from. He's like, India, where are you from? Like Bangladesh. And he's like, oh, isn't that like Pakistan? Like, isn't that the same thing? I'm like, no, like it's not, it's two different things. And he was like, no, it's like the same thing. And I'm like, no, like, have you looked at a map? Like, it's not. They're like two different countries. And he was like, yeah, but like they like used to be the same thing. So they're still the same thing. And I'm like, no, they're not the same. Like being Pakistani and being Bangladeshi are two different things.
Which is why there are two different names for them. So
Exactly.
make sure to tell anybody who says something stupid like, so these things have two separate names because they are two separate things. This is a mug and this is a cup. One has a handle and one doesn't. Like, if you have to explain it to them like they're stupid, you should go ahead and do that. I completely agree.
I'm sorry. The roast of like, have you even looked at a map got me.
Yeah, I feel like you're saying I relate because I feel like so many people like just like we talk about different identities because of this whole lumping in and boxing in like cannot like understand different like countries or beyond like maybe two or three identities, but then they still probably couldn't point out where the country is on the map. I feel like that just goes into general like education. And yeah, there is kind of like this attitude where like I feel like in the AAPI community, maybe because it's just like a smaller group or because this ignorance, people feel like when they're like when there is like an AAPI to single out, they can say stuff that they know they wouldn't be able to say with maybe some other people as well. And that we need to work on that because I feel like there's also kind of like the model minority myth as well, where people think that like if you might be punching up or like that bullying someone like but they might be successful or like they come from like this background that like isn't maybe as like stigmatized that that's okay or they can still make fun of you on the basis of that. And I've gotten the comments, I've even gotten like I love my family, but sometimes like just the talk about like, oh yeah, how is it, being Chinese, like do you like this like food or like do you like this thing because of your like ethnicity, like it doesn't feel like right, I guess. And yeah, the I thing is pretty common. So
I think there's also some like um stuff in our community that we're not really like I don't want to say it's racist, but it kind of is because like sometimes I would like be going into like a restaurant or I'd be hanging out with other people that are Asian in my class, but they're not the same type of Asian as me. But it'd be like, are you Japanese? No, are you Korean? No, wait, no, you're mixed. I was like, no, I'm none of the above. Like, if you don't know it, just don't assume at all.
Yeah, I think it's better to ask than to assume.
As okay, as I'm gonna bring this up every time, as a Pacific Islander, we do have like broader features. Like I feel like our features are very like my face is huge. That's just how it is. And I tend to get the comment that I look like Hispanic a lot. So people will just walk up to me and just like say stuff like that. Like I literally had this guy not even 3 days ago be like, the part of town I'm living in, he goes, well, it's fine for you. He's like, because you're Hispanic. And I went, whoa, first of all, like I'm Hawaiian. He goes, well, you get it. He's like, you're brown skinned. And I was like, so stuff like that, I think just not arguing with people, like the first step is to not argue with people when they tell you what they are. Like there was no argument. Nobody knows you better than you know you. So if you're saying like who you are and all the pieces of you and the first thing they do is argue with you, then that's already the end of the conversation for me. Like you can't ask me what I am and then not listen when I tell you. So.
Yeah, that's a great word of advice there. And kind of the second part of this I wanted to go into as a question is, do you feel like people pay enough attention to the very real issues or problems that could sometimes impact AAPI communities?
No.
Yeah, no. I mean, like there has been recent news during the pandemic because of like the hate crimes, but before that, there was nothing.
Yeah, that's like what I was like saying before. Like, is our APIs represented in media? Like, since COVID, there's been more, but before COVID, I feel like what Trinity said, like, no.
It really have to take like a full-on pandemic to make people like understand and listen. It's just nonsense.
It was also just like we were talking about earlier, just like a bunch of like casually like racist things that were happening, like whether it be like random like Asian accents in movies with like characters and stuff, or like drawing them weird or to be like irritating or just like loud or like super smart, or the character who wears glasses who sits in the corner. Like definitely after COVID, like you're saying, like it took a whole pandemic. There was like a lot of like better representation. It was stereotypical, but it was like stereotypical where we were like, yeah, we do that. Like, yeah, that's real. And it wasn't like um odd to look at, but
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. A big kind of thought in my mind here was also kind of like a statistic I remember reading that says that AAPI is like the most like an unequal group economically in America. Like there are some groups who like make above like far above the average like median for like an American household, and there are some groups who make far less, who don't have the educational attainment, who may not have like the same level of resources as some other members, and how it just is so spread out and stuff among groups and how that's often ignored. And I also think that like I've heard this before that mental health also isn't very talked about.
ooh, I mean, at least the Asian parents that I've been around so far, like my personal family and stuff like that, are super bad about mental health. Like it doesn't exist. It isn't real. And it's something that you should and can be able, like you should be able to work over it in their head. Like that's just how it is in a lot of like our communities, that it's not real. Like you're not actually depressed, you're not actually anxious, you're just complaining and you need to stop. And I think it's part of like the whole transition of like them coming to America and having to put all like the stuff behind them. So any of the problems that they see now don't matter because it's not as hard as the struggle as it was for like any of our immigrant family members to get here. So it isn't real if you're sad, because what are you sad about, you know? So I think they just push it past.
I completely agree. In my family, my extended family, they pretty much don't believe in that kind of stuff either. I mean, my cousins, they do. They have like free will. They're all adults. Like they can go out and get help if when they need to. But like having immigrant, one of a parent that is an immigrant, I think growing up would be really hard. But my mom was never like that.
Yeah, me too. My mom like always made it known that I could talk to her if like I needed help or if I needed someone to talk to, or like made it known that the other adults, like in my environment where I'm growing up, like aunts, like friends, like her close friends that like we think of as family are there for me. Like she's always made it known that I always have somebody to talk to.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. I know it can vary among community as well as kind of the experience of your family on level of connectedness there. I was wondering, going back kind of like, and to kind of like the ones I was talking about like inequality, do you ever feel like there is like that kind of thing? Like there's assumption that like your family is like well off? Because I feel like that was something that like impacted me and stuff as like one of like a few Asians in a community in Denver.
I think just in general, being Asian, we always kind of like get sidelined. No one really like talks about us. Even, yes, we're sometimes the stereotypes are true where like we do become doctors or lawyers, but that's because pretty much the parents push them to do that. But our race in general gets sidelined because we hear a lot more about other people than we do there. We're just kind of like in the middle.
Kind of like the invisibility. I
It's like,
feel
oh yeah, we got those people and those people. They're there too, but like they're not important.
I don't think anyone's ever like thought that I came from a wealthy family, but then again, like I do predominantly look like Pacific Islander, like brown type thing. So my people are normally poor. So it was like the opposite end of the spectrum. Like nobody expected me to have anything nice. And they were right. I really didn't. I mean, I had everything I needed, but like any of like the newer stuff I didn't have. But growing up like that, you think everything's nice. So to me, we were the richest family on earth because we had a gallon jug of juice in the fridge. So that's pretty much all. Like nobody ever thought that we were rich, but it's different. Like for me and like Trinity, you know.
I didn't grow up rich either. I have like extended family members that are, and they help support me when I need it. But growing up, my family member, just my parents and me, we kind of just grew up, just us in an apartment.
Yeah, that's great. There's such like a wide band of experience that, like I said, kind of in between groups, it can very vary what the conception is. And I know some are more like professionally like represented than others to kind of make that up. So kind of moving on from this to something a bit more positive, what is one of your favorite things about being AAPR?
One of my favorite things about being AAPI is like the diversity of people and cultures. Like I love to learn and teach about traditions and customs within other ethnicities and within other communities. Like I feel like not many people would know about my traditions and customs if people like me didn't start representing them and start teaching others. And I also love to learn about other traditions.
Yeah, it's really great being able to educate others and kind of be a positive role model as well is a big one.
Can I say the food? I feel like if I was born any other race, I wouldn't be able to eat the food I do now. And that's a no-no.
I like I said, being raised in like Hawaii and stuff like that. Just I love how like similar we all are. Like meeting other Asian people like up here and like going over to their house and being like, no way, like your grandparents are here too. And just like them, like just like the small little like family stereotypes. So it's like we eat rice all the time. Like it's the food too. I love rice. Like I have no idea. I moved up here and I was like, you guys don't like serve rice here or and just having to eat other things was just so annoying. Like we buy a 50-pound bag of rice once every like 3 weeks. It's every day for everything. And just like the way that we talk to each other, like our mannerisms, like the little ways that we call each other. Like one of my Asian friends like went like she went like shh, and I like turned around all quick because that's just how some Asian people call each other. And it was just like insane to see how we were raised thousands of miles apart and we're still talking the same. Like your house looks like my house. Look at all these photos you have stapled to the wall. Like it's just incredible to see like that our culture goes so far and that there's so many of us and that Asia is so big and we're finally talking about all of us and not just like a stereotype. Like when they think Asian, it's like Chinese, Japanese, Korean. Like they forget about the lower portions, like they forget about India, they forget about the Philippines, like Southeastern Asian, like Northern Asian, like Western Asian, just like doesn't exist. It's like, but now it's opening up more and people know so much more about us and we're everywhere now and I love to see it. We also have a lot of kids, so I mean, like I'm one of 6. My mother's one of like 10, my grandfather's one of 17, and usually we're having like 3 to 4 kids, so I just like seeing that there's so many of us everywhere now.
That's so great. I just want to throw in there. I know that a lot of people have big families, but I've noticed something like with me being Chinese, a lot of my other like Chinese friends are like only children. So sometimes there's like small families, big families.
Yeah, I'm an only child, and my mom had one sibling, and my dad had 2 siblings. So we weren't really from big families. But my dad, like my grandparents, had a lot of siblings. Like my grandpa had 7 siblings, which compared to Alexis isn't that many. But and then my other grandpa was somewhere near 11, I think.
Random little convo now. Just people in Hawaii, man, if you have less than 3 kids, everyone looks at you like you're weird. Like they're like, are you done? Or this one needs a friend. You should have 4. Like it's very custom to end on an even number because they have us in groups. And it like sounds weird because it's like not planned, but it is. Like me and my siblings, we're all like a year and a half to 2 years apart. So basically the way they put it is like, so she has someone to walk to school with. So like usually families are like groups of like 4 or 5. Like there's normally like anywhere from 5 to 9 people in a household. In specifically Polynesian households, we have so many kids and it's the best thing ever. Like all my brothers and stuff, I hate them all, but they're my favorite ever. But like I don't know what I do with like all my siblings and stuff like that.
I'm actually the only child, but that's kind of my fault because when my parents were like, "Do you want a sibling? Do you want like a little brother or sister?" I'm like, "No, it's just me." And then, but my mom, she grew up, she was the second youngest of 6 sisters. And then the only reason why was because my grandpa and my grandma wanted a son, but they never ended up getting one. They got like 7 daughters instead. And then when it came time for them to have kids, one of them had 4 kids, ended up having 2 sons. There's like another 2 sets of sons were in my in Atlanta, and then 2 more in California. So I have a lot of cousins.
I think it's just so insane. Like I love this whole podcast and like your whole idea with it because it's like we can see like how different we all are being in the United States. Like for example, big families in Hawaii, like I said, 3 kids is like weird. 4 is bare minimum. And then coming up here and all of my friends being single children, I like freaked out. I was like, were you not bored and like lonely? Like I'm like this has nothing to do with anything. I'm terrified of the dark because I've never slept in a room alone ever. Like the first day I slept in a room, I was literally had every single light on. Like the overhead light was on because I just could not be alone. We moved to a bigger house. We went from a 1-bedroom house that was like maybe 1,500 square feet. There's 12 of us to a 3-bedroom house. And by the end of the night, for 2 weeks straight, we all ended up in the living room sleeping 3 inches away from each other because we just couldn't be separated. So, I mean, I'm sure there are like ups and downs of like both, but I love having so many siblings. I'm glad we don't have any more. Like 5 is enough, but I like them all.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you all grew up in such like big like kind of community. I feel like that's been a big theme this episode of like finding the people you connect with and just celebrating such a big, diverse, amazing group of people who have like a lot in common, but a strong community. But there's also all the differences, and I'm just really feel hopeful after hearing all this that things are going to get better and that it's going to be an AAPI time.